Welcome to the Ripened Heart Podcast, where we explore the depths of the human psyche through the lens of homeopathy, human design, and astrology for soul-deep healing. Each episode will feature vulnerable and thought-provoking conversations highlighting healing modalities that help us shift our perspective on what it means to be a healthy and fulfilled human being in today's world. I'm your host, Kaylee Anello. Let's dive into the podcast. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Ripened Heart Podcast. I can't believe I'm going to have an episode out the following week for you all. I did not know if this was going to happen, but I'm being consistent for the time being. And I have my fiancé, Florence, on. She's an astrologer at Cypress Healing Arts, and I've gotten a lot of requests to do human design episodes. And for those of you who don't know, I've been reading human design for, I want to say 2.5 years. I've known about human design for over 3 years and have experimented with it myself for that long. And I feel like with each year that passes, I integrate another level of human design. Now, I am not the best technical human design expert. For those of you who understand variable, I am 3 parts right. And it is just not my strong suit. So if you are looking for super technical, less anecdotal examples, people like Sam Zagar are really good. But I just wanted to explore emotional authority today because I feel like it's been a huge lesson for me this year. And Em and I have both had some major life changes come up, or big decisions that we've had to make. And, spoiler alert, sometimes that wasn't making a decision at all. We're both generators with emotional authority. And so waiting to respond has also been a huge lesson, waiting for emotional clarity and sometimes respecting the fact that the timing isn't right and there is no clarity. No matter how long you sit on it. And I think that that's a really beautiful thing too. And as soon as you make that decision, whether the decision is to take action or not, there's a great sense of peace that tends to come over you after that. And so, this episode is geared more toward generators and people with emotional authority, but it's really for anyone because you'll have somebody in your life who's a generator or, a sacral being. They have the sacral center defined. Over half the population has emotional authority. And, even if you have the emotional center open, you're still taking on the emotions of others and amplifying it, making it stronger and louder. So it's going to affect your ability to make decisions and choices and to see things clearly anyway if you're around that energy and you're not aware of it. So I think this episode will be applicable to anybody. You don't have to be a human design expert at all. I'm going to make this really practical and real life. I kind of like to call these kind of episodes human design in real life because you can see the practical application of human design. And because Em's here with me, I'm sure we're going to throw in plenty of astrology too. So just to start off, saying, the basics of my design and my astrology, big 3. So I am a generator with emotional authority, and I'm a 2-4 profile, so that's the hermit opportunist. And then in astrology, my sun is in Pisces, my moon is in Aries, and I'm also an Aries rising. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Em, have her introduce herself a little bit for people who don't know her. And yeah, thanks for being back on, Em. It's always great to have you here.
Yeah, it's great to be back. Well, I'm Emily, and I'm an astrologer. Most of my interest lies in very practical applications of astrology. So that in particular being around health and just how to take transits or your natal chart and just really be very practical in your application of it. And I also have a great interest in karmic astrology, and I look at past lives. And I do have a background as well in natural health. So in terms of my human design, as Kaylee said, I'm a emotional generator, and I'm a 4-6 profile, so that's the opportunist role model. And then for my astrology, I'm a Cancer Sun, Scorpio Moon, and Aries Rising, just like Kaylee, Aries Rising.
Yeah, I think I've said this in a previous episode, but when you have the same rising sign as your partner, it's always a really interesting experience because, you know, the rising sign does set the foundation of your chart. So you'll have some similarities. And I just find because we're also similar age, I'm slightly older than me, we just tend to go through things at similar times. And we've both had a lot of lessons around emotional authority and waiting to respond this year too. And just, I've really seen with each year that passes the value in pairing human design with astrology. Now, I know that there's a lot of, you know, kind of purists out there who are just diehard human design fans or just diehard astrology fans. But there's a lot of people who use both and utilize both. And I, you know, from the 3 years we've been experimenting with this, we've been into astrology for longer than human design, but I feel like our knowledge and our integration of it has just skyrocketed, especially over the past 2 years. I think out of necessity, because, you know, when your world gets turned upside down collectively, you get to see a lot of your shadow. You get to see a lot of your weaknesses, where you want to grow. You're really tested. I mean, like, I feel like the whole world was going through wave after emotional wave collectively, just with everything going on. And so I think it's just like, I feel really solid on it now. And even if you really have emotional authority down, there's still going to be certain situations that take you for a ride and catch you off guard and are really, really, really frustrating to go through. And the big thing that I've learned is that if something starts with an emotional wave, you're going to continue to have emotional waves about that thing. And sometimes it's better to just set it aside when that's the case, because usually, like I said earlier, it's either a clarity issue or a timing issue or both. You know, maybe you don't have clarity because it's not the right timing. And I think that piece is so important, especially for generators. You know, people have this idea, I think, that you can rush this process. And for generators, it's really kind of Capricornian in a way to me. That's how I have experienced it, where it's like very step by step up the mountain with a lot of breaks in between, where nothing much is going on. You don't have, you know, many changes happening or a lot of movement. And then movement tends to come, you know, a lot of times aligning with the astrological weather, you know, like around eclipse season, a lot of stuff tends to be stirred up and you got to respond and you got to make choices and decisions. That was certainly the case with this last eclipse. Oh my God. It was like decision making times 20. But I find that those rocky periods where you're really tested when you're going through those big highs and big lows on the emotional wave, so much good comes out of it. And it's like, you know, kind of like growth rocket fuel. Like, you're just surprised where you end up in a couple weeks time. It's like, you know, so I tend to almost, I hesitate to say I like those hard times, but in a way, maybe it's sadistic, but I kind of do like it because it's just exciting and you feel like I would rather go through those hard times than to feel just stuck, you know?
Yeah, I think they have a tendency to shake up what needs to be shaken, so that if you had somehow kind of shoved something under the rug, or kind of forgotten about something because, your mind is occupied with something else for the time being, it's like shows you the things that actually are going on in your subconscious, and just to actually address it. I think it gives you the opportunity to look at things that you may not be aware of, like day to day, and then from there you can kind of make some major changes, or even just I think in a way too, because we're both emotional authorities. It's like you get to learn every time a little bit more how you operate under that emotional authority, and what sets it off, what triggers it. And I think it's just it's definitely hard in the process. I agree too, where it's I kind of like those in some ways. Just the Scorpio moon is it's that's quite literally intense emotions, and just Pluto and Scorpio, that's all about emotional extremes. And so, but it's for the point of transformation. And so I'm comfortable with that discomfort, but at the same time, it's even if it's rough, it's there's always something kind of better on the other side of it too.
Yeah, it's kind of finally this is getting resolved and looked at, and there are some things that remain a stalemate, because it's just, you got to go through it. I mean, there really is no shortcut sometimes when it comes to spiritual growth, or life phases, whether your issue is around career or relationship or money or whatever it is. There's gonna be periods of time, I find, and I know you find this, obviously, is that it's it's coming up for a reason because of your astrological transits. And so if something is coming up really strong for you, that's a sign that the energy is with you to work on it, and that you probably will make more progress in that, just because it's not just irritating you just to irritate you. It's irritating you so that you take action. And even if you can't take action right that second, it's bringing up new levels of awareness that you didn't have previously, that are going to be really helpful in assisting you in knowing how to navigate action when the time comes to act. And so things are always coming up for a reason. They tend to come up cyclically as well. I think from my experience, everyone has we talk about the big three in astrology, or sun, moon, rising. I feel like everyone has a big three of things that trigger them, that come up in cycles. I even see this in patients in homeopathy. There's a few remedy states that they cycle between, and it tends to be kind of similar remedies, but different problems will come up. And I'm sure it's based on transits. One time they're coming up, it's all about how they just want to make more money and they can't support their family like they should. And the next appointment 8 weeks later is oh, my relationship with my mom is really grating on me again. And then 8 weeks later, it's the third problem comes up, where it's man, I wish I could just focus better, or, whatever it is. It's we all have states that we cycle between, and that are kind of our Achilles heel. And it doesn't mean that doesn't change over time, and that we get better and better as we peel back the layers. What I find, in homeopathy, which, you can say the same with having awareness of your human design chart or your astrology chart, is the more awareness you have and the more you can work to shift the energy, when it does come back around, it's for less time and it's less intense. And, it's just slowly but surely it's fading, and it's not bothering you so much, or that thing doesn't trigger you so much anymore. And it's kind of it's funny, because I find that people don't realize how much progress they actually make. because the brain is designed to think about what's wrong and fixate on what's wrong, that like, you know, in like you'll have to remind people like, remember when you had migraines every single day and now you don't have that? And they're like, well, yeah, but my back hurts. Or, you know, it's like, but yeah, but celebrate that win. Like, that is life-changing, catastrophically huge. You need to celebrate that. And I think, you know, because there are things that get our attention, it's so easy to fixate on how much further we have to go, how much we need to fix in our lives or in our physical health or emotional well-being. And it's like, you have to really look back. And, you know, I invite all of you to do this who are listening. We're in December of 2021. Even if you're listening to this years later, just think about how far you've come in the last 365 days, you know, from wherever you're listening to this. And just think about all of the things that seemed like huge problems, that seemed like life-changing decisions that have resolved and that aren't problems anymore. And even if, you know, there are things that you're still working on or you're frustrated about an area of your life, you really have to see how far you've come, and then you can cheer yourself on better and shift your perspective into something more positive. So now I just want to take a step back and explain what emotional authority even is for those of you who are completely new. So basically in human design, everybody has an authority. And so 51% roughly of the population have emotional authority. And so you can use my body graph to look up your human design chart. You can use my human design to look up your body graph, any website that you wish, and it's going to tell you what your authority is. And so if you have the solar plexus defined, which is the triangle on the right hand side of the body graph, then that means that you have emotional authority. And so how that works is that when you're going about your day making decisions, you're going to have to wait for emotional clarity to be able to make a informed decision that you're not going to regret later. So usually, you know, the famous words of people with emotional authority are to sleep on it, let me get back to you. The bigger the decision and the more energy or resources it's going to require, the longer you should wait. Because, you know, we find that we make these decisions and sometimes it's really hard to get out of them and we really, really regret it. And so, you know, that's why it's always okay to wait and to ride the emotional wave. You know, you're going to feel the highs and the lows. You're going to see the pros and cons. You're going to feel that emotional wave in your body. And it's going to make it confusing for a little bit to see whether something is a yes or a no for you. And there's no shame in taking as much time as you need to reach an emotional neutral, as close to neutral as you can, where you just really know deep down what the answer is. And that takes a different period of time for everybody. You know, some people it's, you know, a night to sleep on it. Some people is, you know, 48, 72 hours. It really depends how much that decision is, you know, emotionally triggering you, really. And you know, there's never going to be 100% clarity because you're going to have felt the highs and lows of that, and that's okay. You're really just looking for about like an 80% certainty, and I think that the more you practice this, the more you'll know deep down what the right decision is to make. And this really is just a practice. There's no perfection here. You're going to want to know your type as well. So, you know, it's going to look a little bit different if you're a generator or if you're a projector or if you're a manifestor. But the same principle goes. If you have emotional authority, you're going to need to wait things out until you have emotional clarity to make big decisions. You know, I think we've all been there. We kind of, we decide something in the moment and we regret it later because, you know, the day comes around and we wish we hadn't made that choice. You know, we make it from a purely emotional space, and Em and I are going to illustrate this in a couple of decisions that we've had to make, and how sometimes the only thing you can do is just to really wait. And you'll know when it's a yes, and you'll know when it's a no. It'll be very obvious when you've reached clarity. So I think the first example that we're going to get into that we dealt with this year has been something that we've had an emotional wave about and no clarity about literally for about 5 years now, which I know sounds crazy, but it's true. And we've finally reached a decision on it. And I think now, reflecting back on it in hindsight, I understand why there was no clarity on it. So do you want to get into that a little bit, Em?
Yeah, sure. And that is where we currently live, which is Portland, Oregon. And this is something kind of, so I guess we would kind of maybe touch on other things, just like in terms of like when we first visited Portland, this was like before we knew about human design or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But even just going off of basic intuition, there was kind of a like sort of feeling about it. Like, it wasn't really like there are some really cool things here in terms of like natural medicine, which was really our main interest in being here, and also beautiful nature, and I mean, the food here is really great. There's like an amazing just consciousness in terms of like high quality food, like in terms of farming and everything like that. And like a lot of locally made stuff. Everyone's like very conscious of, supporting like local business, which I think is cool. And another thing too is just like people here are more open-minded to things like astrology or human design or, anything, any of those kinds of systems. So there are good things about here. It's just, there's always been something just kind of like about it in terms of, like it's been kind of hard overall to make friends here. We did end up picking remote jobs, which definitely made that harder. But it's like, yeah, like, I mean, I don't typically find that it's easy to make friends here, just in general. Like, it's, I don't know.
Well, and that's important for both of us because we both have the 4 line in human design. It's like, it's all about your network.
Yes.
And so if you're not finding that network, it may not be the right place for you. But the thing is like this story does have a silver lining. So basically, I think it's just because my chart is very cardinal in astrology. So it's like, if I set my mind to something, I want to resolve it immediately. I get to work, I get tunnel vision, and I want to figure it out. And I don't rest until I have an answer. That's just how I am. And so, brought up just, what was it, like 3 weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago? I don't know. Time seems so strange right now.
I think it was about 3 weeks ago.
It was about 3 weeks ago. She's like, I'm just really not happy here. And we were thinking about, taking a trip to California, and just exploring other places. We know people on the East Coast. We were maybe thinking about exploring the East Coast. And so I started kind of researching places and, the classic, like going on Zillow, looking at it, getting a feel for it, looking up like YouTube videos on cities to get a visual on them, which honestly is so helpful because it gives your sacral something to respond to. And I found that within like 30 seconds or maybe a minute or two max of watching the video, my sacral would give me a yes or a no about a place. And I also had feeling cognition. So that basically means in human design that like I have to feel things out, and the more I'm able to do that, the more information I get on something, if it's right for me or not. And so I'm kind of combining a lot of different parts of my design and astrology, you know, not consciously, but it's just, I know it by now. So I can kind of dissect it. And it was just like, nope, nope, nope. Everything I looked up was a no. Nothing was exciting me. Nothing made sense. Again, it's like I consider my network, like where do I know people? The places that I knew people didn't make sense. You know, Em and I are people who have friends literally all over the country and kind of the world. I mean, we know people in the UK as well. And so everybody is very scattered out. So no matter where we pick, it's like, it's not going to have all our favorite people there, which was something that's always sad to us, because our dream is to just like gather up all our people and like have one area where we stick to, like, and you know, so we have everybody in one place. And it's funny because, you know, we're Saturn and Aquarius, so, you know, people who have that placement, they're like, they don't really settle down very easily, and maybe it's just our age. You know, I'm 28, Em's 29, so we're in the thick of our Saturn return. We have our exact Saturn return next year, so I'm sure that's going to be, you know, some interesting podcasts will come out of that, I'm sure. I may be eating my words next year, who knows. But so basically, we don't love to settle down. You know, a lot of my friends move around, and some are settled, some aren't, and so it's just like kind of a theme, you know, not just for us, but for our friends too. And so basically I got so, this is the thing about the wave, is like, it came to a point where I was so fed up, so stressed out with myself, that inner voice kicked in that was like, there's no clarity, you need to let this go. Yeah. And part of it was sparked by a friend of ours. You'll know who you are if you're listening to this. We had her over for Thanksgiving, and we were kind of talking about it with her, because she also has kind of considered living other places, and she just asked me like, well, what are you looking for? And, you know, I could give you answers as to what I'm looking for, you know, maybe some more sun, a bigger community of people, blah, blah, blah. But for some reason, it's like, this is the thing about having the sacral defined as a generator, is like, it just hits you in the gut of like, oh my God, something about that question just really hit me and really made me pause and think to myself, what are you looking for? You know? And to realize all I was looking for was right here. And that there's a very good reason that we're here. You know, for me, if I had never made the decision to move from Chicago to Portland in 2016, my life would be so different. It's not even funny. And it's honestly so interesting. You know, think back on your life about those little decisions. Like, well, it's not a little decision, is it? It's kind of a big decision, but those decisions, those moments where you almost don't make a big choice, and you look back and it's like, what if I would have chickened out of that move? Like, where would I be now? It's really weird to think about, but it was one of those things where it was just very kismet. Like, we were meant to move to Portland, whether or not we had a sacral yes when we visited. I 100% think that we were supposed to be here. It's been some of the most challenging years of my life, not gonna lie. A lot of growing pains. I feel like we grew up so much in the last 5 years. It's not even funny. And I mean, that's kind of the age we're at anyway. There's a lot of growth. Like, we were talking about this the other day. Being 21 and 22 is a whole stage. Being in your mid-20s is a whole stage. Being in your late 20s, you are so different than you were at even 26. Yeah. Like, me at 26, even 27, and me at 28, I don't even know, like, what? I'm so different. It's crazy.
Well, I think, too, that just, you know, shows, again, and pointing to the Saturn return, is that it really, like, that's such a that's such a time when people are making big decisions about, what do they want to do, like, with their lives? Like, what are you wasting time on? Saturn being, like, father time is, like, coming, knocking on your door, making sure you're not wasting your life, because you do have an end date and you want to be, working towards what you're supposed to be doing here. And the Saturn aspect is, as I had said, it's a karmic, or as I had said, I'm interested in the karmic aspect of astrology, and Saturn is all about where your karma is. So it's hard because it is karmic. It's something, it's a lesson you really have to learn and be kind of careful with. So that's like, a lot of these, in terms of Saturn and Aquarius, like, that's karma within friendships. And it's like, well, yeah, I can kind of see that. Certainly, even throughout my life, but just, even more recently, it's like there sometimes are those feelings of, like, this is familiar, this friendship is familiar, or there are also struggles, like, it's, Saturn doesn't let you off the hook easy. You have to, like, work on your friendships. You can't just, like, just talk and then ghost people. It's like that sort of thing. Like, you have to learn to communicate. Any air sign, because Aquarius is an air sign, you have to learn communication, effective communication. How else would a friendship thrive unless you had a good sort of communication between you guys? But it's not just friends, it's also groups. So it does tend to make more difficulty and challenge within groups. But yeah, it's a lot of growing pains, but you grow fast. You grow faster in a Saturn return, where it's kind of like, the things that need to fall away, they just start falling away. The people that you weren't meant to be friends with, they just somehow, sometimes it's in the strangest ways, like, the friendship will end. And maybe someone from your past and you were friends with for a while, and then they just, like, you realize you guys just don't have anything in common anymore. It's like these types of things. Saturn return, just in general, this is, often the time when people decide to get married. It's the time when people, like, I think there's so much pressure. It's kind of weird that we have, college ends at about age, 22 for most people, if you do decide to go to college. And it's like, oh, and then here's your career. But it's like, well, like, interestingly enough, if you go by the, astrological time frame, it's like people don't tend to find their true calling or their true purpose or, their career until right around, 29, 30, and just maybe even just after their Saturn return. So it's actually like, if you're currently going through your Saturn return and you don't quite know what you want to do, that's also very normal. So I just wanted to state that too. Just, there's so much growth and so much that happens during this time that in some ways, like, it's really difficult. It brings discipline. It makes you have to be an adult in situations where you maybe never had that experience yet. And, it's just, when you're going through a Saturn transit, it's like, my astrology teacher taught me, where it's like, you either become the Saturn, or you deal with the karma of not engaging with Saturn. So it's like, you become that more mature person, or you kind of get this backlash for not doing that, not taking those necessary actions towards becoming, a more adult version of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if you're not going through your Saturn return right now, I mean, to some extent, because Saturn is transiting Aquarius, you may have had stuff come up around friendships and groups, like, everybody. Absolutely. And honestly, That's definitely been a theme. I mean, everybody I talk to has lost friends, even family members.
Yep. Groups,
relationships, group membership because of the pandemic, polarizing opinions on the pandemic, because America is going through its Pluto return, which is very polarizing. Like, that's why the country is more polarized than ever, and bickering amongst each other, left or right or whatever. And so that has been a thing anyway, so that's going to amplify that Saturn and Aquarius. Where's my group? Where do I belong? And, there's been an explosion in online groups, and Aquarius rules the internet.
Yep.
So what I've found is that I meet people online. Like, during this time, I've met people online. Like, I've met people here in Portland because I've given them a human design reading, or because of an astrology group I'm part of, and then they're connecting me to other people in Portland based on another online group they were in. But then it's like online meets real life. So it's interesting. So, like, if you have Saturn and Aquarius natally, think about that. Like, especially, Em and I have it in the 11th house, which basically is just like that amplified again, where it's like you may find that you need to just lean into meeting people online, whether it be romantic or friendship. It's a great time to join online groups. I think that's why, everyone has a membership now. Everyone has a community now. And I think it's great. I think it's exactly what we needed. And I think that will continue to remain a thing even post-COVID. Now, I will say I do encourage real-life relationships and to take those offline, because it's not as fulfilling sitting behind a screen and talking to people. It's kind of like a cheap imitation. It does the trick, but, you'll feel like hopefully a longing in yourself to engage in real life too. We don't want to lose that part. The more Aquarian our society gets, the more virtual reality it's going to get. So we don't want to lose that in real life, That's why, I guess I'm going on a tangent here, but when I take patients in homeopathy, I'm always like, it'd be so easy to just do Zoom, but I need to have an office. I love meeting with people one-on-one. It's amazing. It's so fulfilling. It's beautiful. I get to really feel your energy and get to know you on a soul level. And that's been my favorite thing still to this day, like bringing it back to our journey in Portland. If I had not done my homeopathy mentorship, oh my gosh, moving to Portland, it literally opened a whole nother door for me that needed to be opened. It was like destiny, to be honest. Like, there's nothing I love more in this world than learning homeopathy, becoming a homeopath. It's just been so fantastic, and I just would not have had it any other way. And so to wrap up this part of the story is, once we decided, there's no clarity, there's no place to run, we need to buckle down, root in, build a life for ourselves, not put it on hold. Things started really falling into place very quickly. We got invites to like I said, meetups in person, and things just felt a lot better. And I realized how much stress I was putting myself under by having that big question hang up in the air. Because even if you're ignoring it and you're not thinking about it, it's still open-ended and it's draining your energy. And that's something to really think about. Really make the decision to not decide. That's very different than just trying not to think about it, because it's going to keep coming around again and again. It's going to irritate you. And so there is a very different energy behind deciding to not decide, deciding to not entertain it, deciding to let it go, and things fall into place. Because as generators, it's a waiting game. I hate to say it, but it's a waiting game, and the universe will let you know when it's time to move on from something. It will make it so obvious that it'll smack you in the face. There's not going to be any denying it. It's going to keep boomeranging back around for you to respond to again and again until you get it.
Well, and another thing too, which actually is kind of related in some ways too, because one of the major themes we have going on astrologically this year is a Saturn-Uranus square. Because I was going to say something about Uranus in Taurus. So this, we have this energy with groups and friends and restrictions on our liberties in Aquarius. And then this is making a tense square with Uranus and Taurus. And Uranus does not do well in Taurus. Like, this is like the planet of higher consciousness, change, shock, trauma. Like, it's kind of like this, you never know what you're gonna get with Uranus, and it's in the sign of stability and security and our materials, and because Uranus is much more of like like your genius and not so much it's more about ideas, and Taurus is like that's your actual material assets, your resources, and it's also nature. So like there's this feeling that we're all experiencing where it's like you're trying to find your group and your new friends maybe, but then we don't feel comfortable because like the economy is like, well, it's just the whole world economy is effed right now. And then it's like you can look up any sort of place. Let's just take the US for now. Any place in the US has some sort of natural disaster that could potentially happen, and now Uranus and Taurus brings more of that sort of like potential for natural disaster. Unfortunately, it's not to scare people, it's to make them aware like this is actually a cycle where we're gonna have experiences of like more extremes in weather and natural disasters and that sort of thing. So this feeling of like I don't feel safe like where I am, like it can be coming up for a lot of people right now, and it's not the easiest to be dealing with, but I think that's why we kind of want to find our people and our groups, because man, when shit really hits the fan, you want to have like people you can count on and people you can trust, and even if it doesn't, like even if things are like it makes you think about those things. Like, I want people around me. I want to know the people locally to me, as we, spoke of, or as Kaylee was mentioning, like, we don't just want internet groups and internet friendships. We want people in real life, because that's human, This is how we get through harder times, is like keeping connections actually local and in person as well. Because that's how we're gonna get through rougher times in general, So
that explains why we've had a lot of wildfires, we've had a lot of you hear about food shortages, you hear about even the rise of Bitcoin and what that's going to mean for the economy. All of Crypto. This instability is primarily because of the transit, and so that also says that this is not forever. The beautiful thing about astrology is that you can see that hard times end, that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and to have awareness of it. The more awareness you have of like, okay, this is just a period of time, this is just a phase, this is just energy that we're all experiencing, we can band together, we can talk about it with each other, we can express our feelings and know that we're not alone, that if things feel unstable or scary or everything, it feels like it's changing and it's never going to be the same, and I don't know where to live and I don't know who my friends are. This is because the universe wants you to really look at this and see and examine, and where do you sell yourself short in your relationships, and where do you need to empower yourself about money maybe, or where do you need to relax and let go and not be in total control of everything. How can you teach yourself that you're resilient and that you're more resilient than you understand?
It's that's a great word to use, resilient, because it's like, Uranus usually brings this need to be adaptable to whatever sign it's in. So in terms of like money and finance, like, it's like that's why people are going to crypto. That's why people are looking at gold and silver. That's why people are, even if you're not super financially savvy, that's why people are getting more interested in gardening and, starting to grow their own food and maybe start canning things and going back to even some of those traditional things. And it's not to bring fear. It's just to, maybe like there's a sense of fragility in us if we don't have these sort of basic preparation skills, because it's like we never know what Mother Nature will bring to us, and or even if it's just the financial market, like if there's a crash, like, are you ready for that? These are things where it's like, can you be prepared, and just like in a way just kind of like, I guess another thing too is maybe bringing some of these concepts just into your everyday life, so that when bigger things, more traumatic things do happen, you are more prepared, or you have some sense of understanding of what to do in those scenarios. But also, yeah, like having Uranus, interestingly enough too, it's like when you think about higher consciousness, there's this sense of like almost like trust in yourself and trust in the gods that there's a reason for this. Uranus is actually the planet of astrology. It's the planet of foresight. So it's like Uranus has this gift of like, here's the insight of what the energies are going to be, like what the what's going to be in the collective consciousness during this particular time, what's in the psychic weather, what's in the actual weather. This is the map. This is like the cheat sheet in a way that we stopped using for a very long time, and we're bringing it back, thankfully. Where it's like, this is how you work with nature. That's what astrology really is. This is how you work with nature, and this is how you work with your psychology as well.
That's such a good point. And to bring it back to emotional authority, it's like when these heavy topics are coming up in the news, or you're hearing about the financial market, you're hearing about people losing their jobs, or all of these really emotionally things that are tied to emotions that make people feel emotional and out of control. This is a perfect time to practice using your emotional authority correctly, because if you're listening to this podcast and you hear, oh my God, the stock market is going to crash. What do you mean? And you start to tailspin and you get into emotional wave about it. That is not the time to invest in crypto. That is not the time to create like a storage shed with food. That is not the time to, make choices about what you're going to do to prepare. Because first of all, did your gut respond and say, oh, that's not something I need to worry about? Then don't worry about it. Did it say, maybe there's something there. Maybe this is why I've been curious about money this past year. Oh, maybe this is why I've been drawn to gardening. Maybe I should nurture that talent. So always, anything anybody says, here's the thing. This is a side rant. We live in a day and age where we hear about every single thing that happens wrong in the world. We're bombarded with bad news. We're bombarded with clickbait of, even people in our field, even astrologers, human design, everybody really online who looks at current events and is trying to guide people in their life. Sometimes they use clickbait to rile up the emotions and to make people afraid. It's always something, whether if it's not, the financial market, maybe it's like 5G or how Bill Gates is buying the farmland, or, whatever it is. It's like, this is why I'm so passionate about knowing emotional authority. Knowing that you shouldn't decide to do something until you have clarity, until you're not so rocked by that, until you've had time to be in your own energy and to decide, because maybe you're picking up on other people's fear. Maybe this isn't something you have to worry about. Like I said, that's why knowing, whether you're a generator, what your authority is in human design, it's like one of the best tools that you can have, is to know how to know what your intuition feels like. And even if you don't care about human design, just intuitively, like, we all have that intuitive nature to us that we can nurture and that we can lean into and that we can use to navigate these times, because knowing this kind of information prepares us for times like this. It's why we need to know it. When times are good, you don't really have to care so much about this kind of stuff, unless you're curious and, you're introspective and you just have a natural inclination towards systems and knowing yourself. And I love all of that. But these are the kind of tools that become so useful even when you're just in a major life transition. Let's forget the world, for a minute. Let's just say, you're like Em and I, where do we live, or we had to decide about what kind of wedding we wanted.
Yep.
We were between, eloping or having a small wedding. We didn't know if we wanted to get married in Oregon or Chicago. We even thought about getting married on the East Coast at one point with my friend. I mean, the way to know if you're still in your emotional wave and there's no clarity is if you keep flip-flopping. You think you made a choice and then 24 hours later you're flip-flopping and you're back to square one. That's a sure sign that you need to wait and not make any rash decision. Because I will tell you, Em and I got engaged in September of last year. It is now December 10th, and we just decided maybe a month ago what we wanted to do. But we are not afraid to wait. And that's the beauty of knowing these tools. Like I said, is we knew that we didn't have clarity, and so we didn't make the wrong choice. And the moral of this whole podcast, I am so happy that we waited to make these decisions. I'm so happy we didn't make a rash decision and, because we were feeling restless, we just moved somewhere up and left, or we just booked the elopement. And no, we waited. And then what happened was I saw a venue on Instagram. I know it's funny, but it's a perfect place to respond to things, right? And it was just oh my God, I have to get married there. And done. Now, our venue's decided, we're putting, the deposit down and we're doing it. And it's that's why I'm saying, when when it's a yes, when it's a no. And it's so worth waiting for that definite, not definite 100% either. There's still going to be maybe a little bit of uncertainty with emotional authority, but deep down what the right choice is when you see it, and you don't know until you see it. That's the other thing is I didn't know until I saw that venue what I wanted.
Yeah, it was kind of a strange thing where it's somehow, for some reason, that particular venue, because you showed me, I was oh yeah, that's it. So it's for whatever reason, I'm trying to remember the specific, had we thought about elopement still before that, but even so, it's just for whatever reason, it's you knew why there was an emotional, an emotional wave around it, because it's oh, well, maybe it just wasn't the right place. When you find when you have the right venue, that does make sense, where it's okay, now all of a sudden, okay, I do want to invite people, all right.
Yeah,
not just run away.
Yeah.
Though something about us both, and being Aries risings, having some, strong similarities since we're close in age as well. We both have Chiron and Leo, and that's in the 5th house. And that's all about kind of an insecurity of having the spotlight on us. And so I think we both had to kind of go through that and just like, like, do we want to be seen? Do we want to be celebrated? That's kind of a hard thing for Chiron and Leos, But at the same time, there was just kind of this strange thing that just happened where it's just like, no, that somehow kind of just went away for that moment where it's just like, I'm not thinking about those things. I actually I want to celebrate our love here, And there's just like something really cool and really beautiful about that, where just like we both were excited about it, and it was just like, oh, okay.
We relaxed, and that's the other thing is you relax. You stop thinking about it. You stop flip-flopping. You just know when you know, and that's the beautiful thing. And then everything else starts to fall into place, and there's flow around it. And this is kind of where I want to bring in homeopathy again, because what I've found is that homeopathy and flower essences too are such an amazing tool for emotional waves and for things that bring up emotional waves within you. So homeopathy, in the very simplest of terms, it's a tailor-made remedy for you, for what state that you're in. So say you're dealing with, headaches or digestive issues. We're going to make a remedy just for you, for your specific symptoms. And somebody else who has a headache and stomach upset, that remedy may not work for them because it's so highly specific to you. Well, the beautiful thing is I can apply that to things that are psychological or emotional. So that fear of being celebrated, we took remedies for that, for getting, over this fear of being seen, of even like spending money on a wedding, and how big of a choice that was for us. We both go to the same homeopath, and he helped us with that. And that's just been the best tool that I've had in my toolbox of when things come up to be healed. I use homeopathy and it heals it, and like I said, it's like an onion. It may come around the bend again, but it'll be shorter, it'll be less intense. You'll move through it with more ease and grace. You may need to repeat the remedy, or if something else comes up, you change the remedy that's more tailored to that specific issue. But I think I really attribute that to why Em and I have had so much growth this year in 2021 is, we've been working with our homeopath, and that's why I'm so passionate about homeopathy, because when I read for people, I see that they're stuck in these patterns. I see they're dealing with things that have been patterns since childhood, really. Like, that definitely was for me. I really did not like my birthday because I felt really uncomfortable with people having to spend money on me, give me gifts. I didn't like the attention, and a lot of that stems back to childhood, which I won't get into in this episode. But it was something where I was so happy that it came up again with the wedding so strongly, because it's like now I can really look at this, have more awareness on it, shift my perspective on it, and heal it. And homeopathy just cleared it. It resonates with whatever is out of alignment, with whatever is blocking you, whether that be physical or emotional. And it really goes deep and helps you to change that and transform that. And it's just the most beautiful experience. I mean, I've taken remedies where something will be the end of the world. I'll be like at the top of my emotional wave, and I take a remedy, and I'm not kidding, I wake up the next day and I'm like, nope, not an issue. And like I said, sometimes it comes back up, and that's because we're human beings. We're not robots. We have emotions. We have ailments. We have things that we're here to grow through. And so, this is not about, I never have any emotions because I take homeopathy. No, I have a lot of emotions, and I grow so much, and I move through things, and we have these tools to help us through all of it. And I just cannot be more grateful. And that's why I had this podcast, to hopefully inspire you guys to, maybe check out your human design chart for the first time. Maybe, have an astrology reading for the first time. I know about astrology, and I still get a natal chart reading every January because it's so helpful, and I know where to focus my energy for the year. And it's so beautiful. Em and I might do a follow-up episode where we talk more about planning the wedding and how we use astrology to plan the date, because that's a whole nother thing. If you guys have any questions about that, definitely DM me on Instagram or email me I'm at the Ripened Heart on Instagram, and then my Gmail is just theripenedheart@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you guys with any requests for episodes or questions that you have or feedback on the podcast. I really, really love when this is interactive, and I mean, this is why I'm recording this episode, because you guys were requesting it. So any final thoughts, Em, to wrap up this episode today?
Yeah, I actually just wanted to mention when we're talking emotional waves and relating it to astrology, look for transits to your moon. Your moon sign is going to be the way you deal with your emotions. So that's going to be a major, if you see something like Mars square to your moon or Mars conjunct moon, for instance, like I just had Mars conjunct moon, still kind of going through it. And it's like, it's a very specific kind of like, lots of anger, lots of excitement, action. It was also very irritating and irritable. So it's like you can get a little bit more of an understanding of what kind of emotional state is coming up for you by looking at the transits to your moon, or even on a very simple way too, because this affects us as well, just tracking the moon cycles. Like, the moon changes signs every like 2.5 days. So that's something to, if you're not really comfortable with transits, you can find, what sign the moon is in, like on many free sites or apps. So that's just something I wanted to add. But other than that,
that's beautiful. Yeah, and I really encourage you guys to follow Em on social media. She posts most days on her stories. She's very active on there. She's giving astrology updates, energy updates, and she really brings it down to earth and makes it really practical, like she said. And I love reading them. I learn from her every time I'm reading those, and I hear her talk about astrology all day, every day, but I still learn from them. So I think you guys would really get a lot out of it. You can find her at Cypress Healing Arts, and I'll have her website and her Instagram linked down in the show notes below as well. But I think that wraps it up for this episode. We're just at the hour, so thank you so, so much for listening. If you know somebody who would benefit from this information, please share the podcast. That's how little podcasts like mine grow. Please leave a review on iTunes. That would also be really, really helpful. And yeah, until next time, I will catch you later. Bye.